we should have all the recording working well. One thing that I wanted to mention about the Sustainable Solutions lecture series is the motivation behind this initiative. We wanted to create a forum to support research, training, supporting our students, and overall promoting innovation, innovative strategies to enhance resilience and socioeconomic and environmental well-being. This lecture series has already created research collaborations. We hope that this will also give us opportunities for cross-sectoral partnerships with the private sector and with the public sector. And today we are here with the City of Boston. I couldn't be happier that we are able to have this event. We have been organizing it for a while. I'm very grateful for our Boston partners who were able to find the time. I'm now gonna leave the floor to Bob, who's going to manage the event in person in Boston. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you, Marta. I'm standing here in person, but really this is Marta's, all of her work and organization. So thank you very much, Marta. I'm sorry that you're not able to join us today, but happy that you're over there and able to join remotely. This is, I think, the last of the Sustainable Solutions lectures this calendar year, and it will continue. The effort exemplifies and explores the opportunity of the UMass system as a system of higher ed to be able to address the most significant crisis of our time, climate change. We have hundreds of experts that are faculty and staff at centers and institutes among the 5 campuses. And the 5 campuses have coastal resources from Gloucester to Boston Harbor to Nantucket to New Bedford, across all of the biomes here, that we can address a lot of things for industry, for research. And so we're exploring this collaboration. Here today, we have guests from the City of Boston and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I want to turn it over to Rob DeCanto, Director of the School for Earth and Sustainability at UMass Amherst, to say a few words. Rob?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. And I'm mainly going to echo some of the sentiment that you have already mentioned, as well as Marta. So welcome, everyone, to the final Sustainable Solutions lecture event of spring 2025. I'm Rob DeCanto. I'm a climate scientist and director of the School of Earth and Sustainability at UMass Amherst. The School of Earth and Sustainability is a proud sponsor of the lecture series. I think, as you just heard, you know that the goal here is to spark and to facilitate a dialogue on some of the tangible actions we can collectively take to support a thriving, resilient, and sustainable Commonwealth region and beyond. I want to reiterate something Bob mentioned, that, you know, in addition to creating an open and inviting forum for academic and non-academic actors to discuss sustainable solutions, the lecture series has been an important incubator for collaboration, and I think this is particularly the case across the UMass system of campuses. I would say that in my experience of 25 plus years at UMass, the system has really never been more united around issues of sustainability. And this common purpose, leveraging our complementary strengths on our individual campuses, has enormous potential for impact in the region and beyond, particularly right in this time of waning federal support for environmental stewardship, resilience, equity, and justice. The lecture series has done much this year to elevate this sense of common purpose across our UMass ecosystem. And I want to take this opportunity to personally thank Professor Marta Viccarelli for organizing such an impactful series of speakers and events, culminating in today's inspiring panel of local and state officials. Marta deserves our sincere gratitude. Marta, thanks so much for all the hard work you've done this year. And with that, I'll pass the baton to my esteemed UMass Boston colleague, Carol Thornburg, Dean of the School for the Environment. Carol?
Okay. Thank you so much, Rob, for that wonderful introduction. I want to echo what Rob has said. We have had a wonderful year with several lectures, some in person, some wholly Zoom based, but they've all reached out to all of the UMass campus campuses focused on sustainable solutions. And as Rob mentioned, this really has been the brainchild of Marta. She reached out to us last fall and was really engaged and has gotten things rolling. And I also do want to acknowledge the extensive logistical events of putting these events on when we've hosted them in person with my executive assistant, Melissa Morey, who has chased down things, gotten things organized, rooms reserved, all that good stuff, which is greatly appreciated. And I want to say also the School for the Environment is also a firm and supporting sponsor of this lecture series. We are so glad that it is bringing together a wide diversity of people from very different disciplines. We've had a series of great lectures this year. And without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce the Chancellor of UMass Boston, Marcelo Suárez-Orozco.
Thank you. It's so wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Carol and Bob. Thank you and good afternoon. I'm so happy to welcome all of you, our dearest friends from the city, our colleagues online. Professoressa Vicarelli, buonasera, Alon. It's just such a personal pleasure for me that UMass Boston is hosting the Sustainable Solution lecture series in our beautiful harbor front campus, where the fragility and the vulnerability are very, very obvious, and we feel it. I want to thank Dean Thornburg, Professor Chen, and their teams at the School of the Environment for organizing this important event, together with our colleagues at the Stone Living Lab, again, Professor Vicarelli, our partners at the campus across the system. And as Professor Conto mentioned, I think it's a very good sign that the system is coming together. Systems tend to live in centrifugal dynamics. It's good that climate and resilience is bringing us together in significant and in meaningful ways. And of course, again, my deep gratitude to our colleagues from the city of Boston, Chris, Osgood, Oliver. This is embarrassing for Oliver, but I worked with Oliver's mother. This is how far back I go. When I first moved here from the University of California, San Diego, and La Jolla, I think your mother was the first to host us, Carola and I, at Tufts in happier days in our lives. Kate England, Jody Sugarman-Brosen, and for just sharing their expertise and for being part of a team under the leadership of a mayor that, I have to say, made us so proud. We've gathered mayors and governors from literally around the world at the Rome Summit. And I have to say, the presentation by Mayor Wu, which I'm sure some of you had a lot to do with. I know how this works. I know how the sausage gets made. It was truly outstanding. And it's a beautiful chapter, by the way, in the book that we just released, From Climate Crisis to Climate Resilience, which, by the way, is a very historic document because it has Pope Francis's final statement on healing the planet. And of course, we're probably never going to have a pope so dedicated to climate, to resilience, to the cry of the poor and the cry of the earth as a single cry that calls forth for our scholarly, scientific, and humanistic attention. So this is just a wonderful, wonderful time. This is the threat of the times, Bob noted. And when I became chancellor at at UMass Boston, I came back to the Commonwealth after a sojourn in LA as dean at UCLA. Climate equity and urban coastal areas really became one of our focus, and it emerged as one of the 4 grand scholarly challenges in our strategic plan for the times. It's very obvious. I think we all understand it, some with more scholarly depth than others, that our university, given our locational endowment, just an extraordinary setting in which we live and work, which is both an endowment, but it's also extraordinarily fragile and needs our sharp attention, both for the basic scholarship and the basic research, but also all the translational vehicles that are going to need to be put in place to get us to a more resilient, to a more sustainable, to a more humane future for our iconic city. The challenge of the times requires all of us to come together with, Betsy, you're going to have to help me here, with our granito de arena. How do we say that in English? A little piece of granito de, our little piece of sand. Sand. We're all put a, we all have a little piece of sand to add to this edifice. As long as it's carbon free, we can live with it. We're working on that with the mayor. So this is central to the work of our School for the Environment, our Stone Living Lab, and so many of our endeavors throughout the campus. I'm so happy that we have such a meaningful and authentic partnership with the city of Boston and with the governor. Again, I'm extraordinarily proud that in the Rome summit, many of you were there, the governor gave an exemplary address on how an all-of-government approach to building climate resilience looks up close. I think the eyes of the world, particularly when we had the summit here at the UMass Boston campus last month, is very obvious to our colleagues from around the world, Africa, the Americas, that this is a model to look at very carefully. The Boston, the Massachusetts, all of government approach. So I treasure our partnerships, and Climate Ready Boston, now Boston's Office of Climate Resilience, you've helped, I think, build one of the world's most important city-led climate endeavors. And I think the world looks at the city of Boston and at the Commonwealth. Having spent a lot of time in LA, I often say, I mean, the Commonwealth is amazing. You can put the entire Commonwealth in Los Angeles County, and you have a little bit of room still. Right? Bob knows. So tiny, but very important. The whole world looks at the Commonwealth on these and other matters, by the way, that I'm not going to reflect upon now. I think I'll stop here because you have a lot of work to do, important work. Let me just say that I am so happy that the system is coming together. I think Professor Del Conte put it best. This requires a systemic approach. This has to live in different campuses in different ways. I like to quote the great Tip O'Neill and say all resilience is local. How we're going to get to the point of building the resilience to get us to a more sustainable, to a more democratic, to a more humane world is going to be global. There's a fundamental grammar here, and that's what the science helps us understand. But the grammar at the deep level doesn't tell you the iterations of how, think of it as language, how different languages speak different truths and have very, very different tonal rings. So I think it's extraordinarily important that we continue the work. I think that the Commonwealth and the city show how we can also work together. I think the coming together of Mayor Wu and Governor Healy in, it wasn't in this building, it was at the campus center for the summit, the Massachusetts summit, I think speaks very powerfully about what a state can do and what cities can do to make communities more resilient. As federal engagement with the issues continues to disappear. I'm an English language learner at Chancellor, so I hope that's the correct word. The word that came to me in Spanish, I can't say it. I think it's fundamental that we step up because this lives in cities and in states, in municipalities, in so many complicated ways that it's us that are called forth to develop the blueprints for resilience that will be needed now and moving forward. I think a final point, and then I'll let you get to the serious work, is the inequity issue, which goes to the heart of the ethical factor here. It is the case, empirically, that those who have had the least to do in the making of the extraordinarily wicked crisis we now face, the least to do with creating the crisis, who are paying the bulk in terms of suffering of its consequences. And here there are two dynamics. One is transgenerational. With climate change, we're robbing children of their future. Their future, their ability to flourish, right? When the Greeks thought about education, they said education should be about the eudaimonic development of the human child, the flourishing of the child. That's being disrupted by unchecked climate change. And the poorest in the world, those who have had the least in creating the pollutants that trap heat and that create increasingly unbearable living conditions in vast zones of the world. I'm an anthropologist by training, and the question I began to ask about 45 years ago is, what are the causes and what are the consequences of large-scale migration? At every turn in the human journey, we are Homo sapiens sapiens. We're the children of Homo sapiens mobilis. Migration made us sapiens. At every turn in the human journey, climate has been a decisive factor in human movements. The forced displacement of human beings will be the next very dark chapter of climate change in our world. There's no hiding from that. you can live in the magical world of trying to ban words. Reality lives by a different set of rules. You can prohibit the use of climate change. It doesn't get you much. So in my own field of human migration, from very early on, why people move very clearly, conceptually, in my own thinking and writing, climate has been such a central vector for those journeys. So I hope you have a wonderful series today. I'll stay for a part of the discussions. I like to note that as we move forward, there will be a Cartesian binary here that will be with us. Technology will play its role, but nature-based solutions would be as significant a part of the algorithm to get us to the sustainable space that we need to get as technology. Adaptation as a biosocial phenomenon is as significant as the mitigation. And we need to have greater symmetry, a better balance. Too much of the conversation is exclusively dedicated to mitigation and to technological approaches. We need more nature-based, and we need to have a better understanding of the social adaptations that will be required to face the wicked challenge of unchecked climate change. Thank you so much. Muchas gracias. Have a wonderful conference.
Thank you so much, Chancellor, for your thoughts, your words, and your actions. We're going to move on to the panel. I forgot to mention who I am. I'm Bob Chen. I'm a faculty member in the School for the Environment and Director of Grand Scholarly Initiatives. And this is a Grand Scholarly Challenge, as the Chancellor sort of mentioned, the one of our times. I also wanted to point out that our Provost, Joe Berger, is here in the audience. Thank you for coming. We're going to hear from each of our panelists, and then we're going to have some time for questions and answers from the full panel. Briefly, the four that have joined us, Oliver Sellers-Garcia is the Boston's first Green New Deal director and is a cabinet level senior advisor to the Boston Mayor Michelle Wu. Chris Osgood is the director of the Office of Climate Resilience and Mayor Michelle Wu's senior advisor for infrastructure. Kate England is the former Green Infrastructure Director for the City of Boston and recently appointed Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And Jody Sugarman-Brazan is the Deputy Chief of Worker Empowerment and the Office of Labor Compliance and Worker Protection. So an esteemed panel to be hearing about what we can do looking forward. And you guys have figured out the order. Which order are we doing? And you can come up here and speak. Oliver? Nope. Nope. Yep, there we go. And then we share that screen. I think we're okay.
And I just want to put it in
You just
presentation mode,
do
right?
that.
Okay, great.
And that should be good.
Okay, great. And what I can't see is if you can see my face, but it's okay. You don't really
It's up
need
in
to
the
see my
top.
face.
It's in the top box and you're in there.
See my screen, which is a lot prettier. Okay, there it is. Weird angle. So first of all, I will just reintroduce myself. I'm Oliver Sellers-Garcia. I'm the Commissioner of the Environment Department and the Green New Deal Director for the City of Boston. And I really want to thank Marta, Bob, Carol, and Chancellor, and so many others. It's just such a pleasure to be here, and it's especially meaningful, I think, to just sort of highlight a few things that the Chancellor said about the significance of UMass Boston being the forum that I was going to say the four of us from the city, three of us from the city, and one of them from the state. Sorry, Kate. Are here because even in I've been working in the Boston area for a very long time, but even in my sort of 3 short years at the city of Boston in this role, I've just seen the continued growth in the prominence of the UMass Boston system and UMass Boston as playing a role of sort of leader and convener in discussing these topics and in really looking at climate change as a much more integrated and applied field of study for us in Boston. And so when I think about just to highlight some of the role that the university has played, whether it is the summit in Rome or the Resilient Mass Summit, both of which the Chancellor mentioned, I think I really just want to underscore how lucky we are to have so many parallels among our leaders in our institutions and in government. When we think about how, I joined Mayor Wu's team because I loved that she really has always seen climate as something about people. And that is something that came through very strongly in the discussions in the Vatican Summit. And I think that there, of course, the contribution was by and large scholarship and governance. And I think what we're here to talk about a bit today is the local government part of it. And I will talk a little bit high concept, but mostly it's about how it gets done. And I think that just for myself personally, even though I wear all these hats and I do all these things, I really am just a glorified project manager. And I do this because I just like getting things out into the world. And I hope that we get a chance to talk about some of those in the question and answer and from the presentations from my colleagues, because at the end of the day, I think most of us are in local government because what we do shows up on the sidewalk or in someone's house right away. And that is incredibly gratifying. And that is where people will first be able to, unfortunately, feel the negative impacts, but also the benefits of taking action on climate. So what I'll do is I'll just talk a little bit about the climate and Green New Deal agenda, give everyone a bit of framing on what our climate analysis points as our sort of key vulnerabilities, and then talk about planning and policy. So moving into my slides, I have, as I mentioned, been at this for almost 3 years. And from the day I started, I have been asked the question, what is the Green New Deal? Sometimes loudly and challenging me, other times very quietly, sort of like, I feel like I should know what this is. Why don't I fully understand it? And I will say that it is really, it's a concept, and it is a way of conceiving, and the way that Mayor Wu, when she ran for office 4 years ago, planted how we can think of climate action as being more than it had been traditionally in the past, which was just addressing a set of climate priorities, but taking inspiration from the movement that was created by what I will point out was federal legislation that did not pass. That's where the name came from. But what is really more significant is the larger recognition that there is a movement and a responsibility from government and our stakeholders to think of climate action in a way that does multiple things at once. And the way we've conceptualized it in Boston as a policymaking framework, I'm happy to say feels extremely common sense when we explain it, and I hope it does to you, which is really looking at the intersection of climate, livability, and justice as our North Star for what we are using our immense but limited tools for. So when we think of climate, that is reducing greenhouse gas emissions and resilience. When we think of livability, that is what makes our lives and ability to thrive in a city, such as public health and good jobs. And when we think of justice, it's about recognizing that we have all of the conditions that we're in built on a history and a literal landscape of injustice, and that the things that we can do should really be about transforming that and taking intentionally, looking at our investments as moving folks who have been at the back of the line in big moments of social transformation to the front of the line in terms of receiving the benefits, because that is what we are in. We are in a moment of transformation, whether we're all aligned of what direction we're going in or not, that is what is happening now. So another way, okay, so I'm going to keep going down in level as I go through here. Another way to think about the Green New Deal is just in some thematic topics that are, again, no surprise. Building decarbonization, transportation, energy, resilience in nature, and most notably workforce. This is something that hadn't been typically part of the climate agenda. With some operational goals here about what it means to cover these topics. And you'll see that really what we're going after is not just the technical solutions in these areas, but doing it in a way that creates family sustaining jobs, retooling our organization so that we're using the entire city bureaucracy. And I like to use the word bureaucracy because I don't think it's a bad word. We have these institutions that can do a lot, even if they're a little creaky. And I have an asterisk because this used to be my great 2024 slide of obtaining the most federal funding possible, which I will show you later. We did a lot of, but it is what it is. Okay, so moving on to sort of where we're starting from. Very quickly, this is something we could talk about in a lot of detail, but just so you understand why our priorities look the way they do, because this is the situation that we're in. In Boston, 2/3 of our emissions come from existing buildings. That's the energy they consume and also the energy they consume for the grid and also the energy they sort of use and burn on site. It's not split out perfectly in this pie chart, but I'd say about between 40 and 50% of our emissions come from large buildings. So that's about like 7,000 large buildings. Then there's a 20% that comes from, it's what's called residential here, that comes from small buildings, but that's about 60,000 buildings. And then we've got around 1/3 that comes from transportation. That third, 80% of it is trips in and out of the city. It's not the folks who live in the city. That's intuitive for everyone who lives here. And also another way to cut that 30% is that around 60% of it is passenger vehicles. So there's a lot that isn't passenger vehicles, but there's more of it than is. And when we look at the resilience challenges, again, some of the greatest threats that we have been focused on are heat, stormwater, and sea level rise combined, particularly with storm surge. This is a slide poached directly from Chris Osgood, and so he will tell you more about it in his presentation. But this is just to give you a snapshot of these risks, of course, that we're all sort of conceptually familiar with, manifest themselves in a lot of different ways. Here are some examples of what could happen and has happened in the past, but we're just sort of broad strokes thinking about potentially looking at what has been, 15 or so days over 90 degrees in the recent past to by 2070, potentially 3 months. Storms becoming much stronger and more erratic. And that really manifests itself in risks that have much more to do with what we've done on the land than with the storm itself. And then with sea level rise, looking at several feet by 2070 in a way that is sort of you'll see in some maps really changes what it means to be a coastal city. We have information like what I've shown you and so much work that we've accomplished because of an enormous amount of planning that we've done. Boston has sort of always been at the forefront of municipal level climate planning with several climate action plans, I think 5, and several topic specific plans. And this slide is almost intended to make you dizzy because of the number of resilience plans that are incredibly thorough. And what I think is especially notable is that they result in a sort of conceptual consensus-based design for all 47 miles of coastline and more. So we have a tremendous amount of planning done. And now is really the moment where we have been shifting into implementation. And I'm not going to read everything on this slide, but as you can see, just even in the Wu administration and the year or so prior, there have been many things that we've been sort of rolling out as a result of these plans, and also because resources become available, or we really make strategic decisions with existing resources to do a lot of different things that cover both resilience and mitigation. But as you can tell, I think that there's more to do in climate planning. And one of the areas that we have consistently, and I mean sort of climate planners or municipal climate people, I will speak on behalf of all of us, really haven't done justice to the jobs component of this. A lot of climate plans talked about the technical solutions, and then it was like, and trust us, green jobs will come from this. But if we don't plan for it and understand the problem specifically, we can't build the solutions in as much depth as we can the policy and technological ones. So we've been working, led by Jody and her team, on a workforce needs assessment that she'll tell you about, that really, I'd say, is the last piece of our climate planning in terms of the topics that we haven't ever covered before, that will really give us an understanding of the job impacts and potentials of addressing climate, and also where we have skills to cover and the programs that appropriately build those skills, or where there are gaps. So this is the federal funding slide that I mentioned I would get to. We were extraordinarily successful in getting competitive funding from the Biden administration. Of course, there was also some block grant funding, but the vast majority of it was competitive grants for the municipal level, and also that we got with our partners. The majority of the Inflation Reduction Act was actually tax credits from a sort of whole legislation standpoint, and that is at risk now, although it's not as certain to go away. And I think the question that we've been receiving nonstop is, well, what happens now without the federal funding? It's too complex an answer. We can give you specific grants that are getting canceled, some things that we're able to replace. I think the big picture is, in my view, that the Biden administration's funding was, it felt once in a generation, even if you weren't being pessimistic, but it was never going to be enough. The way we operationalized it is, I think, how it was intended, which is to catalyze and to test out. But it isn't going to be, perhaps the tax credits would have been, but the grant funding is not sustaining for long-term climate action. We are in the problem in federal administrations of both parties, that we don't actually have the sort of recognition of what it costs to get this work done. Okay, very quickly, just to give you some more idea of how we're looking at this big picture, is that we for over a year now, we've had a couple years, a Green New Deal dashboard that tracks a lot of our action by metrics that are a lot easier to understand, much more readily available than greenhouse gas emissions, which we actually can really only track 2 years in the rear view mirror. And a lot of that is modeled. And so we're looking to shift that into holding ourselves accountable for new policies that we'll be putting out, and new programs that will come from the next two things that I'll mention, which is a climate council that we put together last year, which really delivers on that all of government approach that I mentioned earlier. We have 13 cabinet chiefs who have sort of budgetary or policymaking, regulatory oversight in areas that could really make a very big difference in climate, but most of which are not climate is not in their mission yet. And this really has been a real sort of embodiment of Mayor Wu's commitment to use all of the tools of government to do that. And we are tracking what these different agencies do to contribute to our climate goals through that dashboard. And finally, climate planning doesn't actually end, despite those slides that I showed you. And we are currently doing a update to our climate action plan. But what is really exciting about this is that we are setting a short time frame. It's from what we're going to do from 2026 to 2030. Past plans were really all about imagining a longer term vision or daylighting issues that were a little bit difficult to build consensus on. We now actually just need to know what we're going to be doing over the next few years and not give ourselves a time frame that we can sort of kick down the road. And so this is our first plan that will be fully integrating our carbon neutrality and resilience goals as well as climate justice. Will give us a very specific roadmap for what we will be doing as a city, but also, I think for the first time, naming a lot of our implementation partners who own a lot of the delivery of the things that we need in order to meet even our 2030 goals. So the link is at the bottom of this slide. And there's a lot of engagement going on. In fact, next week we have workshops in several different communities happening in the evenings. So check this out. We'd love to have folks come and join us. So with that, I will turn it over to whoever comes next.
Osgood.
Thanks so much, Bob.
We'll do a little dance.
So I am Chris Osgood. It's wonderful to be here. I serve as the director of the Office of Climate Resilience. I really liked Oliver's description as glorified project manager. I feel the exact same way. And it's really terrific to be in this room with all of you, to think of a word that the Chancellor used. Talked about this as a team. And I think it's very much not the four of us as the team, but the 50 plus of us, the entire UMass system city that is a team. I mean, Rob and Bob and Katie, Joe and Lindsay and Paul, I feel like we talk all the time. And so much of the work around resilience is work which we have done together with all of you. So I'm going to try to do 3 quick things over the course of the next 5 to 10 minutes. One is to talk a little bit about the risks we face. Oliver touched briefly on these. Second, talk about our response. And third, and somewhat mainly, talk about some opportunities for collaboration, research and innovation collaboration that are in front of us. So first, to talk about coastal resilience. As all of you know, we are a city that experiences a degree of flooding even on sunny days in some parts of our city. And we're looking at, as has been well documented, about 40 inches of sea level rise between the start of the century and the 2070s. And for a city, 1/6 of which is built on landfill, that has cataclysmic impacts if we fail to act. At least $1 billion of annualized losses by the time we get to the 2070s, if we do not take action. And right now, our strategy for taking action is, so what is outlined on this slide? 3 core strategies happening at the same time, but with slightly different time horizons. A set of work, first of all, that is being led by our Office of Emergency Management. That's really about how do we support our residents, thinking about the storms that may happen today. So how do we make sure that they are prepared and that they are connected with the systems of both recovery and response? And how do we make sure that we are providing new and better tools to people and to property owners to protect them in their communities?
All right, I forgot to share the right.
Oh, no problem. As Bob is taking care of that, thank you very much for taking care of that. The image that you had seen, the image that you will see, is a map of something which we did last September, which was the city's first, and we think the nation's first deployable day, a 1-day training exercise where we had people set up on a perfectly sunny day, deployable flood walls around their buildings, in part so that they could test them in advance of what tends to be the more flood-prone season here in our city, the winter nor'easter season. But really also to socialize deployable flood walls as a short-term immediate tool for more property owners to consider. And so we coupled that with a tour that some of you were on, as well as a bit of a demonstration on City Hall Plaza itself. As we do this very near-term work, there is a set of work which has really been identified in collaboration with many of you. Those near-term projects along our 47 miles of coastline where we most need to act today to protect people and property and communities. There are roughly 18 projects across the city of Boston that we have identified. The mayor has put $175 million into our capital budget, our 5-year capital plan, more than any other point in the city's history, to be able to address this coastal flood risk. A number of those projects, many of you have been directly involved in or familiar with. The four that are completed at the bottom, McConnell in Dorchester, Martins Park in the Fort Point Channel, Langone in the north end, Pierce Park was completed by Massport, lower right. And then the one that's under construction in the upper right is Ryan Playground, helping to address the flood path in the northern end of Charlestown. Similar to what the Chancellor noted at the top, and that Oliver sort of touched on with each of these projects, we are not looking simply to reduce the risk. We're also looking to make sure that these are incredibly wonderful, beloved assets, 365 days a year, not just during the storm. So that seawall that helps protect the north end is sort of what is beneath the seats of the people who are sitting at Langone Park looking out that sunset. We want to make sure that we are reducing risk, improving public access, and enhancing the ecology and health of our harbor and our environment in all the projects that we're doing. These are the ones that are completed. We have another whole set, which many of you are directly involved in, underway. These are sort of that major focus of a lot of our capital delivery as a city right now, looking at those places that have flood risk today and into the early 2030s. I'll also note, and many of you are going to be with us on Tuesday night, we are also moving forward on a long-term strategy in collaboration with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Like many cities, we are tapping into that partnership to be able to bring a level of federal expertise and federal funding to help identify longer-term projects that address longer-term flood risk throughout the course of this century. That will culminate the planning that is really going from general concept to some specific ideas that will be shared initially this coming Tuesday at a community meeting. Will culminate in a report to Congress in 2028. Unlocking a set of opportunities for funding and actual infrastructure development for the 2030s. That was speeding quickly through coastal flooding to touch briefly on extreme heat before really turning it over to the expert on stormwater, who is Kate England, who you'll hear from after me. On extreme heat, the city has two real core strategies. One is making sure that during the heat waves that we are experiencing in our city today, and we'll experience with greater frequency going forward, that we are supporting our residents, particularly those who are most disproportionately impacted by extreme heat, youth, seniors, those with underlying health conditions, and doing it through a new set of tools. Great credit to our Office of Emergency Management and the Boston Public Health Commission, among others. We are providing a new set of ways in which we're going to help keep people cool and have access to shade and water, with great credit to Jody, among others, thinking about what are the policies that we should put in place to protect workers who have to be outdoors, to make sure that they too are protected in the policies that they have, and we're providing structures for folks to be able to beat the heat and stay safe. There's also a lot of work which is being done, led by our Office of Early Childhood, very specifically focused on family child care centers, making sure that those places have great cooling plans headed into the summer and going forward. As we do this work, which is really around sort of what we do during a heat wave, we're also focused on those sort of systemic investments, focused particularly on those places in our city, our urban heat islands, those places that experience a disproportionately high temperature during the course of the summer. These are places that have been chronically often disinvested in, subject to previous racially discriminatory practices like redlining. And we are making a set of very conscious investments in things like the largest rollout of green bus shelters anywhere in the nation, which we did last year along Blue Hill Ave and the Malcolm X corridor, the 28 bus line corridor. Targeting our tree planting very intentionally, not just to replace trees that have been taken away, but targeting some additional tree planting in those priority zones to address places with less canopy cover and more extreme heat. And then launching with some of the federal funding that Oliver was able to secure, a program called the Boston Tree Alliance, a program to target additional tree planting on private properties, really in those areas that most experience extreme heat. The third quick area before top is really around stormwater. Again, the person who, with great credit to her, helped really drive the city's green infrastructure and stormwater effort is the person you're going to hear from next. So I will simply say that in collaboration between the Office of Green Infrastructure that Kate founded on the right and the Boston Water and Sewer Commission that you see on the left, the city is taking a number of strides to make sure that we are investing in infrastructure that lowers the risk but delivers the sort of nature-based co-benefits that the Chancellor spoke about. And Kate will certainly talk more about that. You can see some images that Kate will probably show and go into greater detail on the screen. Some of the projects already been delivered. So before turning over to Kate, I wanted to briefly touch on this and take perhaps shameless advantage of being in this room with this audience, which is to talk through possible areas of research and collaboration and innovation, many of which are already underway. But I think it's useful. We are only going to be able to solve this as a team and not just this team, but this team. One of those is to understand the risk, work which is already underway that many of us are. This, in my mind, is helping us really understand how do we deploy sensors, aggregate data, do analysis, do great visualization to help us understand the risk that is in front of us, both as a near-term forecast, what's going to happen next week? Do I need to deploy those flood walls? Those sorts of things, as well as the long-term models. What should we be doing? What should we be building and where to address the long-term customer base? And importantly, the third part of understanding the risk, how do any of our interventions actually work? Are they effective? We want to forecast, we want to model, but we also want to evaluate. And you are phenomenal evaluation partners to help us understand, are we doing the right things to really help protect our residents? The second area is around engaging our residents themselves. So much of this work is going to be transformative, whether it's the decarbonization work or the energy transition work or the resilience work. It's going to require massive investments that have an opportunity to make a huge impact in people's lives. And we want to make sure that we are getting great feedback about how to do that. Platforms that help us communicate to residents about the challenges that are in front of us, engage residents in some of that solution building is immensely valuable. A huge opportunity for us to think about what collaboration looks like. This sort of third category is probably the space that I think many of us spend most of our time in, with great credit to folks like Katie and Joe on the Living Seawalls project. Some of this is already underway, but we need additional solutions for how we transform public space, how we transform buildings, and how we directly support our residents. And this can be everything from thinking about how we show that nature-based solutions are really the most impactful way that we can address some of the risks in front of us. This could be thinking about how we quickly retrofit a triple-decker building to not only make sure that a basement apartment is safe from flood risk, but it also is decarbonized. Could be a set of things about new insurance products for individuals. There's a whole range of innovation that is needed about the actual projects and policies and products that we're delivering for our residents. The last quick category of innovation and research that I think we are greatly in need of is sort of this category of how we do all these things faster at the pace we actually can. These are the questions around how we build a workforce, how we actually find financing, what are the great governance model for delivering across multiple parties, and how do we think about what the regulatory environment is that ensures that it uplifts the principles we have around engagement and improved environment, but also ensures that we're addressing the risk in front of us. A lot of this is work underway. A lot of this is work which has been led by many people in this room. But I just want to sort of note that in that transition in front of us, there is going to be even greater need for this team, I think, to be working together. And there is huge opportunity to think about, as the Chancellor noted, in this transition from climate crisis to climate resilience, an opportunity to not only respond to the risk that is in front of us, but to reimagine the city we have and to reimagine it in a way that actually makes it even more inviting and more accessible and more a place that everybody can call home. So I appreciate all of the collaboration already. I appreciate all the collaboration that is in front of us, and I will turn it over to somebody who's been a key partner in that. Thank you.
Second one.
Second one. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. Gives everybody a second to breathe in between presentations, right?
Oh, I gotta share. Reshare.
Thank you.
Kate England.
All right, everybody. Hi, my name is Kate England. I was the inaugural director of the Office of Green Infrastructure for the City of Boston. And 3 weeks ago, I transitioned to being the Deputy Assistant Commissioner for the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. I am here because I believe so strongly in this work and this team. So thank you for having me, even though I've technically left. Oh, it is not letting me click. Hang on. Come on. There we go. Okay, so the first couple of slides are level setting, just to make sure that everybody is, feeling comfortable with concepts. Stormwater, what is it? Many of us are urban dwellers. When precipitation falls on hard surfaces, buildings with roofs, pavement, parking lots, sidewalks, and it can't absorb into the ground. It runs off, becoming stormwater runoff. So what's the problem with stormwater in our urban and developed areas? Well, there's a water quality issue and a water quantity issue. So water quality, all of our hard surfaces in urban areas have a number of pollutants, both visible and invisible on them. And that includes things like bacteria and nutrients. It also includes things like litter, leaf litter, and other kinds of sand and grit. And when it rains, all of that, that pollution gets washed off of our hard surfaces into our storm drain systems and into our receiving waters. Common misconception, stormwater does not actually go to a wastewater treatment plant in most municipalities. It goes directly to your water bodies, to your rivers and your lakes and your streams. The second issue is that quantity issue. And the issue that we have here is that the majority of storm drain systems in the country are designed to capture a certain amount of rain, which means that when you get more than that amount of rain, our storm drain systems cannot manage that amount of water. So for City of Boston, our system is designed to handle just over 5 inches of rain over the course of 24 hours. And as you saw on Oliver and Chris's presentations, we have received several storms in the last few years that dumped over 2 inches of rain in an hour, which means our systems are not sized to handle that amount of rain. So thankfully, we have this kind of supplementary piece to stormwater management in green infrastructure. So for the purposes of Office of Green Infrastructure and what the City of Boston is doing, green infrastructure is defined as using plants and soils and other natural materials to capture stormwater, allow it to absorb back into the ground, removing pollutants as it does, and reducing flooding on our streets and our basements and where people are moving through our cities. And I should have mentioned, all the images in the presentation have a little tag in the bottom corner that says the location of the image, the department or the cabinet that is responsible for its maintenance, and then the neighborhood that it's in. So just so you know, all photos in the presentation are Boston green infrastructure. So I just want to quickly jump through a couple of types of green infrastructure. Many of you have probably heard of rain gardens and bioswales. These are the most common types of green infrastructure that you kind of notice in a city. They are shallow, depressed areas planted with native plants. They tend to be very pretty. And you can see that we have a number of them across the city of Boston right now. We also have tree pits and tree infiltration trenches. You probably have walked over or past these and not even realized that you were passing a green infrastructure feature. At the surface, they look a lot like a standard street tree planting, but underground, they have large stone areas that hold large volumes of water, which means they're helping to reduce flooding at the surface by giving that water somewhere to go. And they're providing filtration for all of that water as it passes down through the soil. And best of all, they're giving our urban trees access to much needed water. Most people don't realize trees need about 5 years of consistent watering to establish a healthy root system after they're first planted. The majority of the trees that we plant with our contracts, and this is not just Boston, this is kind of across the United States, get about a year of maintenance, and then they pass out of their warranty period and are handed over to our municipalities. So planting trees in stormwater features gives them that additional access to water that our standard street trees are not receiving. There's also, oh, I lied, sorry, these two pictures are not City of Boston. Sorry, but these are images of green roofs and living walls. This is my vision for what I want in Boston. This is actually an apartment building in Milan in Italy. And this is in the Netherlands. This is Rotterdam, and the just kind of beautiful idea that nature can exist with built infrastructure is really embraced in a stronger, clearer way, I think, in other places. And we're kind of trying to build that here now. But as you can see, plants are very happy on buildings and, you know, can provide pretty amazing stormwater management functions when they are coupled with new development. And then last but not least, oh no, there's two more. Slide before my last slide is porous paving materials. So many of these are actually on the UMass campus, on actually several of your UMass campuses. These are things like porous asphalts, permeable pavers that allow water to pass through the surface. So you still have your accessible hard surface that we need for developed urban areas, but rather than creating stormwater runoff, they allow that water to pass right through. So I wish I could show you a video. It's usually everybody's favorite part of the presentation, but it's really, it's like magic. And then last but not least, we have our constructed wetlands and our marshlands. These are incredibly important to resilience across all types of development. And you can see here, we have a couple of examples in Boston where we have lovely constructed wetlands. This is a park down in Dorchester. There's also the Alewife Stormwater Wetland in Cambridge. And you all have just over here, a lovely bioretention feature. It's not quite the level of constructed wetland, but almost in your quad area. So if you have something, a little bit of time after this presentation, you should pop over and take a look if you haven't seen it already. Okay, so I've talked a lot about water and water quality and flooding, so just managing stormwater. But green infrastructure is a lot more than just water management and water quality. So green infrastructure has all these wonderful co-benefits. I'm not going to read them for you, but thinking about things we've heard today already, green infrastructure can help us with heat mitigation. It helps with our urban tree canopy. It can help address historic environmental justice issues by providing access to nature, addressing food security issues, and helping with air quality. And obviously, we love environmental education. And so there's a lot of opportunity here for education and for green jobs, which Jody will get into in her presentation next. So the Office of Green Infrastructure was formed 2 years ago at City of Boston to deliver more projects like the ones you've just seen. Many of the projects that I showed you were things that were built over the last decade or so. And now that we are, we're supported by this wonderful administration and Mayor Wu, and we have all of these amazing partners, both at City of Boston and through the UMass system and others, we felt it was time to expand this work and bring on more staff to help deliver more of these projects. So a couple of things that I wanted to point out that the Office of Green Infrastructure is doing. We built this office on the foundation of we should be supporting each other, helping each other. And so one of the things that we do is we host a green infrastructure working group. And this group consists of City of Boston employees from departments across the city. I think we have 22 departments are represented right now. And we have about 60 members who come to a meeting every other month where we give them some updates about what we're doing in the Office of Green Infrastructure and then ask for feedback and for opportunities to collaborate with our, Office of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, with our Power Corps program, with our legal departments, with all of the people who are attending this meeting. And then there are also subcommittees or subgroups that focus on coordination and maintenance, focus on details and specifications. How do we make sure that we're building this stuff well? And then also on policy, what types of policy do we need to make sure that we're delivering green infrastructure in everything we do? We also have focused on creating design standards, resources, ways that we can essentially present a package to a consulting firm or to a project manager that guides them in their design of green infrastructure. We got a lot of feedback from people that they would love to do this work. Just tell us what you want us to do and we will add it to our project. And so creating this design package and these guidelines allowed us to hand standard details to our engineering and consulting and design firms and say, this is what we would like you to add to your projects. And so now we have many departments at City of Boston, our streets departments, our parks, our schools that are using these standard details as part of their just everyday capital delivery. So really just kind of sprinkling green infrastructure into everything that we're doing at the city. And then the last item here is we love to build green infrastructure with other departments. We love to build green infrastructure with our friends. So shameless picture with adorable children. But we, for example, have spent a lot of time working with the Boston Public Schools and by extension with children, staff, and families around those schools to build rain gardens and bioswales just kind of on demand. So this is the East Boston Early Education Center in East Boston. We got an email from the principal at the school just asking, hey, would you like to help us take this space that does nothing for us, the sidewalk to nowhere, and turn it into something better for our students, for our teachers? And so the pictures you saw on the previous slide was us physically building this rain garden. And then this is what it looks like today. But I wanted to point out a couple things. The children at the school picked all the plants. So we created a Google form that basically contains plants on an approved plant palette that we know will do well in green infrastructure features. And then we let the students vote. So the children got to like vote through a Google form, pick the plants they liked the most. We bought them. And then the children and their parents helped us install them. The rain garden itself, the actual subsurface, the excavation and grading was done by our wonderful maintenance contractor, Parterre, who Jody may mention in her presentation as well. And then they helped us do this planting with the children, which was wonderful. And then the staff at the school are now doing, weeding and beautification. And then our maintenance contracts go out and perform maintenance, larger things. So it's a really beautiful opportunity for us to just, work with our friends in other departments and work with our community. Question about maintenance comes up all the time. So really quickly, just want to talk through this. Joey, hi, how's it going? Formerly PowerCore, great partner with us. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we've been addressing maintenance concerns, because frequently the reason for not building green infrastructure, at least in the past, was we don't know how to maintain it, so we're just not going to build it. And that didn't sit well with me. And that is not a tenable path forward. And so basically decided I'm going to come up with a couple of ways that we're going to do maintenance so that people can't say no because of maintenance anymore. So we remove maintenance as a barrier by promising maintenance contracts. The Office of Green Infrastructure has at all times 2 maintenance contracts, landscape maintenance and porous paving maintenance. It doesn't matter who owns the green infrastructure, whether it's schools or public works or parks, we maintain it all. So Office of Green Infrastructure's contract is used across departments to make sure that green infrastructure is getting the care that it needs. And then we built this multi-pronged maintenance approach. So the contracts, Thursdays with PowerCore, and then our green infrastructure volunteer program. So the maintenance contracts, frequently, we struggle with maintenance contracts because they are procured through a low bid system, which means that you frequently are getting a contractor that is underbidding their competition and maybe not delivering the full scope of the things that you need or not doing it in the most thorough or careful way. And so we tried out a couple of things that I like to call creative procurement, and we're able to procure contracts through RFP, which is request for proposals, instead of RFQ, which is request for quotes. So rather than it being a low bid system, it was based on a reward based on the quality of the proposal, the approach that was proposed. And we also are using the city's certified businesses program, which allows us to do a 3-quote system, which means we identify 3 businesses on the city's certified businesses list. Those are women and minority owned businesses in the city of Boston. And we are able to solicit contract values up to $250K, which is actually quite a large contract for a maintenance contract. So just another opportunity for us to ensure that the contracts are going to local contractors, people who are, from Boston, who live in our neighborhood, who live in the neighborhoods and care a lot about this, and who, are going to perform that maintenance with the amount of care we'd like to see. Our Thursdays with PowerCore program is wonderful. We really enjoy having PowerCore out in the field with us. These are young people who are participating in an earn and learn program. Again, I think Jody may mention some of this, so I will not spend too much time on it. But we teach these young people about green infrastructure and climate resilience and about how to construct and maintain green infrastructure. They perform actual maintenance in the field with us on city green infrastructure, which makes them uniquely qualified for future positions with the city of Boston. And then we also do an NGICP training with them, which I'm pretty sure Jody will be mentioning as well. And then our last piece is our volunteer program. So we, after 8 months of negotiation with the city's legal department, now have a volunteer program with an approved waiver that the city is comfortable with that allows us to have volunteers out in the field performing maintenance without us present, which means that rather than planning volunteer events and struggling to get people to come because they, people have lives and commitments and multiple jobs and families. And no matter how great your event is, sometimes people just can't get there, but they really want to help. This program allows people to go out on their own time. They receive training from our office as well as safety supplies. So that includes reflective vests, gloves, tools, and after training with our virtual training and then an on-site training, they can go out whenever they're available. They submit a maintenance checklist to us. They call us when there are problems, and they are in the field, every week or so, which means that we hear about problems with our green infrastructure a lot faster because of this program. So we don't expect volunteers to be able to fix everything, but we do expect them to tell us about it if there's something wrong. To the point that has been made several times that community engagement is incredibly important. We are doing a grant-funded study right now trying to assess where we're having flooding in the city of Boston. The QR code that's up on your screen, which people in this room can't scan because of Zoom, we'll get this out to you all, is a flood survey. Takes you about 2 minutes. It's asking pretty straightforward questions. You know, how high was the flooding? Oh, it's about up to my knee. You attach a photo, you submit it. The results are geocoded, which means where you're standing, or you can pick a spot on the map, and it tells us where we're seeing flooding in the city. We are then going to be using that data for planning for green infrastructure. So feel free to help out. Community engagement is amazing. Also, you have many college students in your system, as well as faculty and staff. So please do feel free to share this around. I'd love to have more results. Okay, last thing. And then I'll pass it over to Jody. Because I'm now with Mass DEP, I figured one slide of what I'm doing at Mass DEP. So really quickly, Mass DEP is obviously heavily engaged in a lot of resilience work as well. We have a couple of reg packages or revisions to regulations that are being made right now. Wetlands 1.0, which focuses on adding resilience elements to the wetlands regulations, will be out and in use within the next couple of months. We're aiming for later this summer. And then Wetlands 1.5, which focuses on ecological restoration, will be out end of this calendar year, maybe early January. But that focuses on prioritizing ecological restoration as part of wetland protection. Our Chapter 91 regs are also in the final stages of review, and we anticipate that those will be out later this year as well. The Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, which had not been revised in 20 years, is now almost ready for release. We are hoping to have that one out in the next couple of months. It now includes way more green infrastructure and gives the appropriate amount of pollutant removal credit to bioretention, which the previous iteration does not. So the previous iteration focused heavily on infiltration and subsurface features, not acknowledging or recognizing that microorganisms and plant life in bioretention actually uptake more pollutants than a simple subsurface system. Fun fact. We're focusing on funding and financing. The state revolving fund is lifeblood to many, many municipalities across the state. We are doing what we can to keep that alive and funded to the best of our ability, as well as 319 and 304B grants, which are for stormwater and green infrastructure specifically. We're also looking at a statewide stormwater funding program, which we will tell you more about when we figure out what that might look like. But I thankfully will be working on that and I'm very excited to see a statewide or a regional approach. And then the last thing is we're working on permit streamlining to make everybody's lives easier, as well as some resilience design standards. Okay, thank you so much for your time. And Jody, I'm super excited for your presentation, so come on up. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. While we get set up, my name is Jody Sugarman-Brozan. I am the Deputy Chief in Worker Empowerment Cabinet, and I'm here on behalf of Chief Trinh Nguyen, who couldn't be here today. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be here. And also, I think it says something about the city of Boston, the Green New Deal, and our approach to climate resilience that workforce is even part of this panel. I think many folks would think panel on coastal resilience, what does jobs have to do with it? I think we understand here in Boston it has everything to do with it. So I'm very happy to be here today to tell you a little bit more about what we are doing. So let me start. I also will say my superpower is overpacked slides. I promise I won't be reading them all. So a lot of this has already been talked about by the folks who came before me. Boston is uniquely vulnerable. We have a lot of plans in place, and those plans are driving investments, and those investments are in the framework of the Green New Deal. Those investments lead to jobs. So for us, that is where the Office of Worker Empowerment and the Office of Workforce Development comes in. Because we know, and Mayor Wu knows, we cannot have a climate-ready Boston without a climate-ready workforce. So we've been thinking about this a lot, and we have to start by understanding where the jobs are, and what skills are needed, and where the training programs are. Then that information will help us develop our plan to have a climate-ready workforce, which is feeding directly into the 2030 Climate Action Plan. So you'll see this slide twice because I'm framing the work that we're doing. So first and foremost, I'm going to say a little bit more about the Green New Deal workforce needs assessment. And I'm actually going to give you all a little sneak preview because this analysis is not done yet. We've been working on it for a very long time and we are close, but the analysis will tell us how many workers will be needed to achieve our goals, what skills the workers will need, where the training system is and if it is ready to meet the needs of the workers that we need to train. For us, this is a really important piece of the economic justice question. Are these good jobs? Good jobs meaning, do they pay a living wage? Do they have benefits? Do they have opportunities for career mobility? And how can we as a city use our policy, our procurement to drive good jobs and ensure that we are breaking down barriers to both the training and the jobs for Boston residents, and especially Boston residents who have been most impacted, as the Chancellor talked about, by the economic and environmental impacts of climate change. So here's the sneak preview. The analysis has showed us already that about 160,000 workers will be needed in 45 different occupations in 6 major groups in order to design, build, and operate Boston's green economy. And these are the 6 different categories. And you can see the trades are by far the biggest category with the highest percentage, a little over 60% of the jobs that we will need. And that probably isn't a surprise, as Chris talked about the infrastructure that we need to build. That requires the building trades, electricians, plumbers, all of those kinds of things. And you can see the breakdown here of different categories. I'm going to go deep dive into a couple of areas. Just like the Green New Deal workforce needs assessment is based on the 4 major categories and priorities: building decarbonization, transportation electrification, transportation electrification, and climate resilience. And why am I drawing a blank on the last one? Energy. Thank you. All right. So I want to do a little bit of a deep dive on building decarbonization. And there's a link here to UMass Amherst. So that's why I wanted to do this. And it talks about the frame and how we did the Green New Deal workforce needs assessment, because we started with the policies that are driving our the climate change policies and goals. And we took that and translated those policies into the costs and investments. And then we took those costs and investments and translated those into jobs. And for building decarbonization, Boston has what's called the Building Emissions Reduction Ordinance. I think most people have heard about it. It's a really important ordinance in the city of Boston, driving our emissions reductions and documentation in the biggest part of our emissions issues, which Oliver talked about. So what we did is we looked at the different BERDO categories, and we worked with staff to understand the square footage of building retrofits that was going to be needed. We used the tool from Rocky Mountain Institute, now RMI, to figure out, take that square footage and translate that into costs. And then we used the Perry model from the Political Economic Research Institute at UMass Amherst, which was created to take investment and turn it into jobs, particularly for big federal legislation. And that turned into these estimates. And again, these are estimates, and this is a preview. The report is not done yet, but you can see that over the next 5 years, building just in the commercial line, the BERDO commercial, which we know is a big area, $4.2 billion, 77,000 jobs, about 15,000 jobs annually. That is not insignificant. That's just from the investment in that one policy. And I'll share one more. And that is coastal resiliency. We've been talking a lot about resiliency here. And again, what we did is we looked at the policies that the city of Boston has around green infrastructure, around a flood overlay, which is a zoning overlay requiring certain kinds of investments that new buildings in that flood overlay will need, and also other policies of the Boston Water and Sewer Commission that are requiring higher level of responsibility for building owners on their flood and resilience. And these have a little different For the green infrastructure, it's a 5-year term. For the CFROD, the district level coastal infrastructure overlay, it's a 25-year. But you can see again, we were able to translate directly policies from the city of Boston into investments, and those investments into jobs. And that's really what we're trying to do with the Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment. When the analysis is done in June, it will not just have the jobs created, but it'll have an analysis of where there's growth. In other words, not just the jobs needed, but how many jobs exist now, how many jobs will there be in that area. And we're really excited because we will also have a tool for job seekers where they'll be able to go online and look at all 45 occupations and be able to do some career exploration, understand what the rates of pay are, where the training programs are, and how to get into those 45 occupations. And we'll also have a skills guide of all of those 45 occupations. So training providers will be able to go to that and understand what skills they need to make sure they're incorporating into their training programs. So we're really excited about that. And as I said, I'd come back to this because we are taking that Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment and turning that into a plan for the Office of Workforce Development. And that plan is going to include a number of things. And some of these are recommendations coming right out of the Green New Deal Workforce Needs Assessment, but it'll address barriers for accessing green jobs training programs. And that means things like ESOL instruction, childcare, and just communicating green job opportunities, a better way of making sure Boston residents know about these opportunities. It will mean improving and expanding green jobs training programs. And the Office of Workforce Development raises a lot of dollars and gets a number of federal dollars to invest in workforce development. So we want to make sure we're investing those dollars in high quality programs that engage employers, that include pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs, both inside and outside the trades, and connecting with Boston Public Schools. And finally, we want to make sure we use our procurement and policy to drive creation of those good jobs. The city of Boston doesn't have a lot of oversight over labor quality or fair wages, but we can in the way that we spend our money. So our procurement can drive the creation of good jobs with good wages. And we want to make sure we do that by doing things like using project labor agreements and enhancing our Boston resident jobs policy, which requires construction hit certain hiring goals. So but before I go into some exciting areas that we're doing a lot of work, I want to say that while we're planning, we are already making an impact. We've just finished a 3-year 23, well, we're wrapping up a 3-year 23 million Good Jobs Challenge grant, where we've placed 134 workers in clean energy jobs. There were 2 other tracks for that, which are healthcare and childcare. PowerCore was mentioned by Kate. PowerCore is a really exciting, and we have other PowerCore folks here too that have been, it started in June 2022. It's a 10-month green industry training program. And it's really unique because it starts with the foundations, 4 months of foundations where folks get an opportunity to get all those wraparound services, but soft skills and all the different kinds of career readiness that you wouldn't get in a typical green job training program. And then participants move into industry academies focused on green infrastructure, urban forestry, and building services. We have graduated 127 students in about 5 cohorts, 75% graduation rate. And our last cohort had an 87% of the graduates were going into green jobs at the end of graduation. So it was super exciting. This summer, many folks have heard of our Office of Youth Employment and Opportunity Success Link program. We put 10,500 young people in summer jobs last summer. Chief Nguyen's working towards 11 or 12,000 this year. And we are incorporating into that something we're calling the Boston Youth Climate Corps. We've identified all of the employers who are doing jobs that may be focused in any way around climate mitigation, adaptation, and those young people in those programs will get some shared learning and career exploration layered on top of their opportunity. I'm going to go into more detail on the next 2, but one really exciting thing happened this week. Hopefully you saw it in the news, and that the mayor signed an historic project labor agreement And essentially, this was a project labor agreement with the building trades and the North Atlantic States Regional Council of Carpenters that is not only ensuring that we will get a strong, a stable source of union labor for the renovation of our Boston public schools to make them more climate friendly and resilient, but also sets up a pathway so that 50 graduates of Madison Park High School every year are guaranteed entry into a pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship program in the trades. Super exciting. And we also won a $9.8 million climate ready workforce grant, which I'm going to talk a lot more about. This is so exciting to me that I had to share another picture. This is one of my crazy slides. Apologies for folks who will get the slides afterwards. It goes into much more detail, but this is a really important example. As you saw in the beginning, the trades is a huge part of where these jobs are going to be as we move forward with investing for climate resilience. This project labor agreement is ensuring that Boston residents and students at Madison Park High School are going to benefit and be doing the labor on those schools and those renovations. So it's super exciting. It also enhances childcare opportunities, investing in ensuring that there are childcare for off hours for folks who work in construction. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You need childcare that is set up differently, and this PLA will invest in that. So I'm going to go through one of the exciting projects that we are very, very involved in, right? That folks here at UMass have helped us as well. We received a $9.8 million grant called the Climate Ready Workforce Grant from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is really going to be a catalytic opportunity to grow our workforce. We are with the largest grant among 9 projects chosen, and we were, we can brag a little, the highest scored proposal. I know that too. So it allows us to create the Boston Climate Jobs Alliance, which is a coalition of employers, wraparound service providers, trainers, long-standing workforce development partners, unions, community colleges, all coming together in order to train and place about 1,200 people in coastal resilience jobs over the next 4 years. And the city of Boston is playing an important role, not just as a convener, but as an employer, because of those committed jobs, many of them are from our Boston Water and Sewer Commission, our Boston Housing Authority, our Streets Cabinet, and others. So it's not only are we playing a role in ensuring that the training happens, but we are playing a role in making sure those people get good quality union jobs when they're done. It is based on labor market research. This we started by looking at where there were going to be jobs in the coastal resilience realm. We then used that to identify employers, and those employers we knew were going to be in those different categories. We have 13 employers who've committed 1,200 jobs, and they're in these 5 categories of installation and maintenance of green infrastructure, nature-based solutions, water utilities, construction and building critical flood and coastal infrastructure, municipal infrastructure services, emergency preparedness, and then community education and outreach. This is what the alliance that we've put together looks like. And I share this because this is a model for workforce development that we think is really important. We are at the City of Boston Office of Workforce Development at the center, but the work is very much driven by the needs of employers, both our large sector employers, like those I named from the City of Boston, but also smaller employers of note. Hardshare Ecological, who's a major contractor with the City of Boston working on green infrastructure maintenance, has come on board as a partner for this effort, which is really exciting. And then we have experts, union partners, childcare and support services. Every person who is participating in this training program will have access to a stipend and childcare if they need it, as that is a really important way to reduce barriers and ensure that people can participate. This is just a chart showing, here are the different over 1,200 jobs. These are the categories in which the jobs, the coastal resilience strategies in which we are addressing, and the employers in each strategy. These are our training partners. And the grant from NOAA is $9.8 million, which goes a long way, but doesn't get us to all 1,200 jobs. So the NOAA grant will allow us to train 645 graduates and place 484. So we are always looking to expand the investment to make sure we can place people in all the jobs we have committed. And these are some of the programs, but also the credentials that people will have after participating. You can see PowerCore is one of our trainers. And this is just a timeline. We have already started training. Codman Square, Excel, and PowerCore all started training in January. And two quick, really exciting things that we're doing with the resources. And that is that we know that many of the building services programs in Boston, which are a pathway directly to a lot of Boston Housing Authority and other jobs, are really focused on energy efficiency. And for this grant, we're using resources and partnerships to help community colleges. And this is where another place where UMass may be a partner with us, helping with micro-credentials, is expanding that curriculum to include helping people learn how to do flood audits and flood resiliency work within buildings as well. And then the last thing is we're working to ensure that we are using the resources from the NOAA grant to have long-term impact by creating not just jobs and placing people in jobs, but pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship programs. Our Boston Water and Sewer Commission has come on board as a major partner in this. We're going to be building a pre-apprenticeship to apprenticeship pathway with our PowerCore program, building a new foundation, our new industry academy in water utilities that will allow PowerCore folks to get additional training at Boston Water and Sewer and be eligible to move into jobs there as well. And that's it.
Thank you again to all four of our panelists. If you could please quickly take a seat up at the front, Chris, Kate, Oliver, and Jody. I know we're at time, but I want to do a very rapid fire sort of question and answer, maybe in 30 seconds. What are you most excited about? One example of things that are going on that you might highlight as very exciting.
Okay, we're gonna do this like really fast.
Really fast.
Okay. You heard about Berto for those 6,000 buildings. We are, well, we'll just figure it out. We are, building a program now that the mayor announced, at the State of the City in March for those 70,000 other, buildings, called Boston Energy Saver. And it's gonna be the sort of thing that all of you, if you're Boston residents, could really interact with, figure out how to do things in your home, whether you're a renter or a landlord, to really bring down energy costs.
I love anytime we get to sort of put shovels in the ground, and we are very close to sort of doing some work that is about interim flood protection, but not for a building, but for a neighborhood, in 2 different places in the city, and excited that is going to be moving forward.
Really quickly, the former team at City of Boston is building some new green infrastructure sites this spring, summer, and fall, which we're really excited about. Most of them are converting intersections that were done, like slow streets projects have been done that basically just created these elevated paved things and converting those to rain gardens, which is going to be really wonderful. And at the state, working with the EEA on working nature-based infrastructure into more of our programs.
I think I already spoke about the program with Boston Water. So I'm very excited about.
You seemed excited. This is completely inspirational. We're so lucky to be in Boston and working with all of you on all of these things that are shovels in the ground happening right there, and not just an envision in the future, but happening now. UMass is a system across the state. How can we help you? How can the UMass system be leveraged to do some of the exciting things and help and again, rapid fire round?
Jody mentioned the micro-credentialing program, which I think she should talk more about, but I would like to see that more as a model where we, I mean, let's be honest, you know what it's like in academia, everyone's always like, how can we be helpful? And it's like, no, but for real, it needs to be like actually like a thing that is really useful. And
we're not known to be quick, but we're getting there.
And so, I think that what that shows as a model is a real sort of good understanding of what we are trying to accomplish and build, and coming to the table with something that is additive and also at the right scale. And that frankly is not actually about research, even though research is incredibly important. What I would highlight there is that it's about education, and that is very important.
Thank you. I'll just add that we have an academic program micro-credential that we can stand up in 2 weeks. So we are reactive.
Well, I feel like I actually talk about this question with you all the time, so, but I obviously went through a little bit of what I think some of our opportunities for collaboration are. Building up Oliver's point though, and Bob, your comment, I actually think it would be useful for us to take a moment just to map your research interests and timelines with our implementation interests and timelines, and see where do those actually intersect.
Yeah.
So that we can figure out how do we really make the best of sort of the work we want to get done together.
And I'll just add, Marta and Rob and all of us have been convening as a UMass system to begin that partnership, and we can, as a system, map. It's fantastic.
So my program has benefited from the efforts of many of our students in the UMass system. There's actually a graduate studio right now at UMass Boston that's working on, they're looking at the upcoming RDA, which is Residual Designation Authority, permitting action that EPA has been talking about. And the students in the course are looking at properties in the city of Boston with over an acre of impervious cover, which are the properties that will be captured under this new permitting action, and are looking at opportunities for green infrastructure on those properties. And so my understanding is the students are also planning on doing some outreach to the private property owners to just offer guidance and assistance. Many of them are landscape architecture, engineering, and other types of students here at UMass. So they, are putting together conceptual designs and stuff. So I think real world application type projects that students in classrooms can do that can have an actual meaningful impact in the real world is something I love to see. And so please keep reaching out, because we always have project ideas for students.
Fantastic.
So I can say a little bit more about what we're hoping to do regarding micro-credentials, which is in that area of training around building services. A lot of folks follow that and do that within our community colleges and graduate and are able to get jobs within building services at Boston Housing Authority and otherwise, is we try to ensure that they're prepared to protect buildings from floods, understand all of the flood resilience, not just mechanisms, but audit. How do you know if a building is in fact going to be particularly vulnerable to flooding? So by doing that, we want to enhance the curriculum and create micro credentials so that people coming out of that training have something to show for it when they go to apply for a job that says, I have not just this associate's degree, not just a certificate, but I have specific knowledge in building and flood protection that thanks to the program that I've said.
Thank you so much. I came here 33 years ago to be on the Boston Harbor as part of the cleanup, and to make a difference with people. And I'm looking forward to working with all of you on making sure that I can remain in a coastal location for the next 33 years. So thank you very much to our panelists. Thank you all for all of your work. Marta, last word?
Yes, I just want to thank everybody for making this happen. Thank you for their time to our panelists, and thank you UMass Boston for hosting this event in person. Melissa was instrumental for the logistics. Thank you so much. Thank you to all who participated.